Hello, 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 and good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you over to our stream today. We have a jam packed stream full of so much news content from both Marvel and DC Comics. I want to be honest here, per usual, we're really going to be focusing in on tons of DC Comics titles, in particular here. Excuse me, my tongue slipped there. I meant to say Marvel titles. So over this past week up on the channel here, we had a ton of really fantastic video reviews stemming from everything over with Birds of Prey issue 9 to X-Men Forever chapter 3. I want to spend just a few moments focusing in on Birds of Prey chapter 9. I really thought this was a tremendous chapter of Birds of Prey, really focusing in on some of our birds trying to locate the mysterious killer that's targeting Barbara Gordon over as Batgirl. Plus, some of our birds, led over by the Black Canary known as Dinah, are trapped in this sort of nightmare dimension here. This really gives an opportunity for some of the artistic talent behind the book, like Gavin Guidry, as well as Jonathan Case to shine. Really highly recommend everybody go ahead and check out that video review, especially if you missed it. I think this latest run of Birds of Prey has been absolutely tremendous. I think Kelly Thompson has been doing some fantastic writing, and I really like the art team, whether it be Leonardo Romero, Jonathan Case, Gavin Guidry, or just whoever is on the Birds of Prey ongoing. I really think this is one of the best ongoing series currently published over at DC Comics, and I'm loving the way that the publisher has been able to implement some of the other Wildstorm characters. X-Men Forever 3 was such a tremendous issue, focusing in on some of the relationship dynamics over between Destiny and Mystique. For me, this is so much fun because Kieran Gillen has really kind of pushed out a mental map of these characters and really has been working with so much of these characters throughout the Krakoan era. Today, we're going to have a brand new preview of X-Men Forever Chapter 4. I am so excited about just these preview pages alone because I feel like they offer a really fantastic coda to the X-Men's Krakoan era and actually do a really fantastic job explaining why there was such an emphasis on Destiny and Mystique's relationship throughout Krakoa, and also why Destiny in particular is just, so down in the dumps all the time regarding the fate of the X-Men characters. That's going to be so much fun to talk about. We also had a really surprising issue of Spider-Man tying into the Blood Hunt crossover, which I thought was surprisingly excellent here. Per usual, this one was written by Zeb Wells, and it featured artwork from John Romita Jr. I think in our video review, I really tried to emphasize the fact that John Romita Jr. is an artist right now who is capable of employing like a very limited style. And I really think Zeb Wells as a writer is so great at accommodating Romita Jr.'s more limited skill set to create some of the best Spider-Man stories possible. Also, the inclusion of Blood Hunt really infecting the character of White Rabbit and turning into a vampire, I thought it was a really darkly comedic element for Zeb Wells to explore the Spider-Man property and really utilize probably an underexplored villain to their fullest potential. So once again, here was not expecting anything in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man 49, but I'm really happy that Zeb Wells continues to challenge the audience and try and push some of the source material to the limit and see what they can find. Before we start off our stream officially, I also want to say that I'm incredibly proud for Wells for really utilizing the character of White Rabbit and finally finding like a sort of punchline or new context to introduce her in. She's been lingering in the background of so many Spider-Man runs even before Zeb Wells, and I finally think he's got a really excellent way to implement this character into continuity and really make them shine. All right, without further ado here, my name is Arakko and I want to officially welcome you over to our stream today. I know we were talking about it up top here, but we have so much exciting stuff to jump into. We're going to be talking about comic book previews, covering some of the final weeks of the X-Men's Krakoan era with X-Men Forever. In just a few moments, we're going to start off our stream with a preview of the latest issue of Batman and Robin. Later on, we're going to do a really big news story over on X-Men Era of Apocalypse that I'm really, really excited to jump into too. Marvel has released a bunch of teasers introducing some of the cast members and characters that are competing to become or to take on the mantle of Apocalypse. Also, we're going to be talking about a brand new Gotham City Sirens miniseries. Wonder if it'll have any tie ins to Birds of Prey. We'll check that out a little bit later on in the stream. Okay, without further ado, let's go ahead and start on the meat and potatoes of our content and really just explore this upcoming issue of DC Comics Batman and Robin. I want to give a thank you to Adventures in Poor Taste for posting all of this comic book content so incredibly fast. And also, I want to spend a few moments just catching you up to speed over on Batman and Robin. So over in Batman and Robin, I think Joshua Williamson has actually done a pretty good job dividing Bruce and Damian's latest adventures into separate subplots. Right now, Batman is actually trapped over from Man-Bat, who started this cult all across Gotham with all these animal-themed villains. Elsewhere, Damian Wayne has been having these like mysterious visions over in his past towards the beginning of the miniseries, and is starting to think that his principal over at Gotham City High School may actually be the brand new antagonist inspired by DC Comics villain Hush, known as Shush. So, Batman and Robin has really been teasing the identity of this character really relentlessly, and I'm hoping that maybe in this preview for Batman and Robin 9, we can get a little bit closer to the identity of that character and to learn more about the narrative in the issue. Also, this comic book, right from the cover alone, is teasing the fact that this one is actually going to have two interior artists. We have Nicholas Sismessager, who's done an excellent job kind of accommodating some of Damian's young adult adventures over at Gotham High. And then we also have Simone DeMeo accommodating not only the cover for the issue, but the really bombastic fight scene over between Batman and Man-Bat as well. Let's go ahead and jump into some of the interiors on Batman and Robin 9. First off, I'm going to read this quick solicit. Batman or Man-Bat? Who will be Gotham's true protector? The people of Gotham will decide. While his father fights for his life, Damian knows Shush's secrets, and it's only created more problems for him as a high school student and as Robin. Can the dynamic duo find each other before it's too late? So here's our first interior page on Batman and Robin Chapter 9. This one is illustrated from Simone DeMeo, and as you can see, we have Batman over in Man-Bat's clutches. I think the way that DeMeo has laid out this page is incredibly ambitious, showcasing like all these rotated panels, really served up with the background over with Batman himself. I also think that Joshua Williamson, kind of very similar to Zeb Wells, is great at introducing some really interesting narration to immerse readers into the narrative, like right from the get-go here, as Man-Bat kind of starts intimidating Batman, stating, "All your rogues talk, whispers and gossip, they are desperately obsessed with you." Also, Williamson is able to pay off this idea really quickly in the next double-page spread here, as Man-Bat has actually created a replica of Batman's fortress. And the sense of perspective that artist Simone DeMeo was able to accommodate to this double-page spread here is so beautiful. I think the way that Man-Bat is just kind of leaping out and flying all across, the fortress of, Man-Bat over in the background is just beautiful here. Also, this teaser only covers some of Simone DeMeo's interiors regarding Batman, so it's going to be really interesting to see what's going on over with Damian and the character of Flatline. In one of the most recent issues of Batman and Robin, we learned that Flatline is going to be attending the same school as Damian, so it's going to be really interesting to watch them apprehend both Principal Stone and try and figure out more secrets behind the character of Shush. I also thought this page was pretty interesting too. Batman covers Man-Bat's brief heroic period and tries to talk some sense into him and stop him from pursuing this cult any further, but it really looks like Man-Bat is having none of that here. Okay, really fantastic stuff over on Batman and Robin. For my money, this is probably one of the top 3 ongoing series at DC Comics right now. I particularly think this comic book is really great for Damian Wayne. Damian is a character who I think is so young at DC Comics that it's really going to be interesting to see his progression. And I don't think many writers have really charted and tracked Damian's progression, maybe outside of Grant Morrison, like Joshua Williamson has. Some of the connective tissue with his Robin series covering the League of Lazarus tournament is being explored in so much depth and really has me immersed in the series. Fantastic stuff over on Batman and Robin. Cannot, encourage you to check this one out enough. Okay, this one is so interesting, isn't it? Jonathan Hickman is actually jumping on board a Doctor Doom comic book over at Marvel. This is a giant sized one shot, as the issue explains. I think it's going to set up some future storylines over with Doctor Doom. Plus, this one is also pretty much an excuse for Jonathan Hickman to re explore some of the plot threads over from his early Fantastic Four run, which in and of itself is also very silly because Ultimate Invasion also explores some of the plot threads from his Fantastic Four run. I love how it's just like such like a launching point for him to explore so many concepts and ideas. Jonathan Hickman also personally has a lot of experience with Doctor Doom as a villain as well. Doom's inclusion in the Secret Wars storyline is referenced on this beautiful cover, illustrated from Sanford Green, as well as we can see the white, like God Emperor Doom robe over for the good doctor as well. Also, this cover is so incredibly stylized. The way that Doctor Doom is just bleeding off the panel here, absolutely beautiful. The artistic circles referencing previous continuity is so amazing. Let's go ahead and see what Jonathan Hickman, what kind of ideas and plot threads he has in mind for Doctor Doom, and to see if Sanford Green is able to top this beautiful cover on this Doom one-shot here. In the near future, Doom alone must save the Marvel Universe. Legendary creators Jonathan Hickman and Sanford Green send Doctor Doom on a journey unlike any he has ever undertaken before. With Valeria Richards at his side, Doom goes on a quest to harness more power than any human has ever wielded before in order to try and stop Galactus from bringing about the death of the universe. This is sending me on such a prolonged nostalgia trip here. Jonathan Hickman did fantastic work with Valeria over on his Fantastic Four run. It's so excellent to see him be able to re-explore somebody who is so familiar with. Valeria is such an interesting character. The children of the Fantastic Four. She has such a great intellect here and is able to produce so many interesting scenes of dialogue with Doctor Doom. Yeah, so I was really expecting like groundbreaking immersive artwork from this series. Watching Doctor Doom floating amidst the rubble in space is exactly what I had in mind here. Really love this close-up seemingly of his face too. I think that's super ominous and creates so much just ambiance in the comic book alone. On the next page, we can see like more of Doctor Doom's armor coming off of him and this interesting caption reading, "We found him." I'm going to read all of the text over in this preview because frankly, it's really sparse and there's not that much information here. Let's check it out. His vitals, however, are almost undetectable, well below survivability thresholds. His armor also appears to be fused, completely inoperable, incapable of life support or stasis. And looking at the heat signatures, it's conclusive. Doom has been like this for a very long time. How is he still alive, Valeria? It's magic, dummy. Bring him aboard. Yeah, it looks like the Fantastic Four ship is just kind of floating through space here, and they actually end up picking up one of their greatest enemies himself, none other than Victor Von Doom. On the next page here, it looks like we have a glimpse at none other than Valeria herself over in a spacesuit. She kind of has like a very emotional confrontation with Doctor Doom as well, stating, "Look at you, just look at what he did to you." Yeah, I think there's so many interesting close-ups, reaction shots, panel bleeds. I think the artwork in this brand new Doom series is going to be really, really interesting. This is really reminding me of the recent Thanos series with Christopher Cantwell. And while that book didn't really connect with me, I thought the art was equally as ambitious. I'm really happy to see Marvel just utilizing like a greater roster of talent and creators to bring about comics that feel a little bit more fresh and unique. I'm also really curious towards what this is leading to. I feel like Jonathan Hickman as a writer wouldn't take on one comic book one shot alone without putting it in more additional context or opening up even more plot threads. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on this Doom one shot here, and I'm going to expect some really big things here when the issue ships here. Okay, this one is slated to come out, looks like this Wednesday, May 15th, and it's also coming in at a really hefty 56 pages. Let's go ahead and talk about our next comic book. This is none other than the incredibly epic X-Men Forever Chapter 4. I have been loving X-Men Forever as a comic book series. This one features some of Kieran Gillen's final writing over for the Krakoan era of X-Men comic books. Kieran Gillen has been such a great writer for the X-Men line of titles. So many of the plot threads that he's been working with have introduced just so many interesting subplots, and I really think that this preview of X-Men Forever does a great job putting the coda on some of these subplots and finally giving readers the payoff for plot threads that they've stuck with for such a long time. In particular, I think some of the relationship drama over with Destiny and Mystique is fleshed out here with so much context, and plus we get really great character interaction between both Hope and Legion. Let's go ahead and see how Marvel is closing out the X-Men's Krakoan era with X-Men Forever Chapter 4. X-Men Forever ends with the question: after everything, do we have hope or not? Our secrets, sinister or otherwise, are over. X-Men Forever ends with the question. From between the pages of Immortal X-Men and Rise of the Powers of 10, the final secrets of the Krakoan Age are revealed here. X-Men Forever 4 is still written by Kieran Gillen, featuring artwork from Luca Maresca, and the beautiful cover we just looked at a second ago was illustrated over from Mark Brooks. Okay, so we get this really beautiful X-Men page really highlighting so much of the political drama over in Immortal X-Men with some of the disparate cast members. In this issue, Mr. Sinister opens with a really fraught conversation with Destiny. He actually adds so much insight towards their relationship and also hints at the fact that actually the character of Destiny may be drawn to timelines where her lover Mystique ends up dying. So we explore this a lot more in the subsequent page, which is filled with so much beautiful panels over from Luca Maresca. So much of Immortal X-Men is just illustrating really tense and bold character moments. So we really need an artist who's going to be able to deliver on some of those big exposition sequences with talking heads. And I think Luca Maresca does an excellent job rising to the challenge throughout this issue. Kieran Gillen introduces so much dialogue between Sinister and Destiny, but it's just utilized so incredibly well, and it feels like no word is wasted between some of these characters either. The way that Mr. Sinister starts to explore some of the timelines that Destiny herself puts an emphasis on really shows the fact that some of Destiny's own judgment is clouded here. I particularly love the final panel here where Mr. Sinister says there is no destiny. And this sequence actually ends up motivating Destiny to reunite with her lover Mystique here for another just exceptional scene. Destiny actually tries to undo some of the relationship damage she's caused in recent issues of Immortal X-Men by pushing Mystique away in certain instances. Even though this comic book is called X-Men Forever, they also reference Immortal X-Men through the pages of the comic book itself by Destiny telling Mystique directly, what we have is immortal. Once again, we have so many beautiful reaction shots from Luca Maresca, really reestablishing the relationship between Mystique and Destiny so quickly in the final moments of the Krakoan Age. And instead of pushing back on Mystique, Destiny actually brings her towards Professor Xavier for that huge confrontation that we're going to get over with the X-Men and Professor X. Okay, so our very last page on X-Men Forever actually focuses in on the character of Hope. Hope right now is trying to resurrect the Phoenix, and she has a couple interactions with her gun that are incredibly amusing here. She says, "Let's talk mutant circuits, Jean. I'm an Omega-level power manipulator. In Legion, Legion himself says, I'm a genuine Omega level power manifester. Hope says, we can do anything. So there you have it. That is the final story page over on X-Men Forever 4, teasing the resurrection of the Phoenix as well as the return of both Legion and Hope in X-Men Forever. I think the way that Kieran Gillen has really managed the relationship drama in some of these preview pages with Destiny and Mystique is incredible, and it's great to see them finally united and for Destiny to just get over so much anxiety that she has harbored just throughout the Krakoan era towards our mutant characters. Really tremendous stuff here. Really looking forward to the wedding issue with Destiny and Mystique, as well as some of the final Kieran Gillen comics for the Krakoan era of X-Men. Okay, next up, we are out of our comic book previews, and we're going to go ahead and explore some of the brand new Marvel Comics news here. Before we get to the From the Ashes era of X-Men, the publisher is actually right now in the midst of the Blood Hunt crossover, where so many vampires are spilling out internationally across the Marvel Universe. As you can imagine, somebody who also has some affiliation towards vampires, none other than Jubilee herself, probably has something interesting to say about it. As this article here prominently displays here, Jubilee was a vampire for 8 full years. Okay, let's go ahead and explore this brand new Blood Hunt tie-in over with Jubilee on Newsarama. This one is written over from George Marston. Former vampire Jubilee of the X-Men joins Blood Hunt in June with her own spin-off one-shot. The X-Men are about to bust their way into Marvel's big summer crossover, Blood Hunt, in a series of one-shots showcasing specific mutants, starting with none other than Jubilee. Though it may seem odd to kick things off with a mutant who has rarely had her own spotlight title. It actually makes perfect sense when you know that Jubilee was a vampire herself for years. Jubilee was turned all the way back in the 2010 story Curse of the Mutants, in which the X-Men took on a whole horde of vampires led by Dracula. She was turned back years later in 2018's Generation X 86, when she was purged of her vampirism by a shard of the Phoenix Force. In Blood Hunts, it's not Dracula leading the vampire invasion, but former vampire hunter Blade, who seems to have been corrupted. In these pages from X-Men Blood Hunt Jubilee 1 by writer Preeti Chibahir and artist Enid Balam, Jubilee is joined by super vampires the Forgiven, who jump into the fray against the feral vampires that are menacing the entire Marvel Universe right now. Check it out. It's so interesting when comic books have this really interesting sense of meta-narrative towards it. The fact that there was a dangling plot thread left in an X-Men comic book that turned Jubilee into a vampire for years and years and years is just such an interesting aspect of the publishing line here. Also, very interesting to see some of these other vampire characters, the Forgiven, joining up here as well in the storyline. Really liking some of the frenetic artwork we have across the issue here coming in from Enid Balam. This is a very nimble Jubilee character. I'm also thinking that the design for Jubilee here matches up nicely with the From the Ashes version that we've seen as well, teased by David Marquez. Yeah, we have some really frenetic artwork in this issue here, which I think is pretty appropriate for a Blood Hunt storyline. It's great to see how expressive Jubilee is as a character. She definitely has younger facial features here, even though she's an older character. That might be something to take note here. Once again, just really strong artwork, showing the fact that this is going to be an issue that really features a lot of plotting here. It looks like Jubilee is being introduced to lots of different characters and is fighting back against tons of different vampires. Okay, Fangs and Fireworks. Running from the past is one race you'll never win. In its darkness suffuses the world, Jubilee's past as a vampire is about to take a big bite out of her, reads Marvel's official solicitation text for Blood Hunt Jubilee 1. It's going to take a bit more than a couple of plasma bursts to get out of this one jubilation. let's talk about the publishing schedule over for these X-Men Blood Hunt issues here. So this one starts with Jubilee issue 1 on June 12th. And then a couple weeks later, we have the X-Men Magic tie-in on June 26th. Looks like the very next week, we have the Psylocke issue on July 3rd. And finally, a few weeks later, the Laura Kinney Wolverine issue closes it out. I think we've also talked about this before, but curiously enough, a lot of these Blood Hunt tie-ins are focusing on some of the female X-Men characters, which I'm actually really comfortable with because I feel like right now these are some of the most interesting characters in the line. In most cases, I would much rather read a Laura Kinney Wolverine story as opposed to a Logan one. Also, going to be really interesting to check in on Psylocke too. I feel like I haven't seen her in a little bit towards the Krakoan era of X-Men. Okay, really fantastic stuff here. Excited to see what Marvel has in store for their upcoming Jubilee story covering the vampires of Blood Hunt. So in terms of Marvel's Krakoan era for the X-Men, I think one character who has served tremendously well, especially towards some of the final issues, was Apocalypse. The way that Apocalypse was able to respond to his former wife Genesis launching a massive assault against Storm and some of the other mutants of Arakko was incredibly cathartic, and it was really fantastic watching Apocalypse team up with Storm to battle his former wife and to really save Arakko as well. So in terms of what's next for Apocalypse in the From the Ashes era, it looks like the mutant villain is actually looking to choose a successor to carry on his legacy. Let's go ahead and explore this brand new teaser coming in from Marvel talking about X-Men Era of Apocalypse. First off, you need to know that this is a really great creative team on this series. Steve Fox has written so many X-Men series that I've been just head over heels for, extending towards comic books like Dark X-Men, as well as others that I just can't think of off the top of my head. Dead X-Men. That was the comic book I also wanted to reference here. Also, Neto Diaz as an artist is just tremendous and has created just so many fantastic interiors on comic books that are not coming to top of mind right now, but just a fantastic creative team all around here. And I also think that the cast featured to try and take up the mantle of Apocalypse is incredibly epic. Let's explore who we have. So we have Armageddon Girl, Cable, Cypher, Emma Frost, Exodus, Forge, Gorgon, Mr. Sinister, Mirage, Penance, Richter, and Wolverine. Emma Frost has been so integral to the X-Men line. Really cool to see her featured among some of the other cast members. I feel like it might give this series a little bit more legitimacy. I would say Cypher is kind of a wild card amidst the rest of the cast. I'm wondering if it was his decision alone to try and join this, tournament to become the successor of Apocalypse. Who else do we have here that's interesting? Yes, the character of Exodus, too. He's been such like a prominent mutant throughout the X-Men's Krakoan era, featured in countless issues of Immortal X-Men, and also really prominently in X-Men Forever. I've been really interested to watch his alignment change from like villain to hero as well. Also, both the Gorgon and Mr. Sinister are two really interesting characters, especially with Gorgon's ties over to the Hydra organization. Mr. Sinister has been explored in so many different ways throughout the X-Men's Krakoan era, and I'm hoping that maybe Steve Foulkes will be able to implement some kind of Mr. Sinister twist to give X-Men Era of Apocalypse a little bit more parity with the Krakoan line of comics. Okay, let's go ahead and see what David Brooke has to say from Adventures in Poor Taste regarding X-Men Era of Apocalypse. Marvel Comics announced X-Men Era of Apocalypse back in March, and today they've revealed the mutants competing to be Apocalypse's successor. So this is going to be a 4-issue bi-weekly series kicking off in June. When I initially saw this comic book series, I thought it was actually going to be like one of the first comics in the X-Men's From the Ashes era, but what it really looks like for me is a transition between Krakoa and From the Ashes for the X-Men. The shadow of Apocalypse has loomed large over not just the Krakoan era, but a substantial percentage of mutant-focused storytelling since his debut in 1986. So these are comments over from Steve Folks back in March about X-Men Era of Apocalypse. These past few years have shown so many new facets of En Sabah, and my Krakoan peers aren't done with him quite yet. So it's been an immense honor and a ton of pressure to step up the slab for Era of Apocalypse, which charts a new path for his legacy in the years to come. I've been lucky to bend the ear of past and future stewards of these characters to make these 4 issues a meaningful entry in the Apocalypse canon, and I had every X-fan's dream task of selecting 12 mutants from across the history of the franchise who might just be up for the titular role. Some are characters I've already had the privilege to write, some are characters I've eyed enviously. Some won't survive the series, but only one will become the heir of Apocalypse. Okay, and then we also have a little bit more teaser text over for Marvel Comics themselves. They say, after Krakoa falls, a new apocalypse must rise. Find out who is Dean Worthy and Steve Folks in Netho Diaz's X-Men Heir of Apocalypse. Kicking off this June, the bi-weekly series redefines Apocalypse and his mission for the X-Men's upcoming From the Ashes era. Okay, I was kind of questioning myself a little bit, but I'm actually feeling like this is absolutely a transition series to From the Ashes, and I think Marvel is even marketing it this way. Specifically here they write, this bi-weekly series redefines Apocalypse and his mission for the X-Men's From the Ashes era. So what I'm really looking for is some of these final Krakoan comic books to finally state that Apocalypse is looking for a successor and to start a tournament here. I really thought in some of the last issues of Follow the House of X, some of these plot threads were going to be referenced here. So I'm really looking for maybe some of the final issues of Rise of the Powers of 10 and Follow the House of X to start seeding some of the plot threads over for this storyline. I really want X-Men Era of Apocalypse to feel cohesive among the rest of Marvel Comics publishing line and not just kind of like a red-headed stepchild that's not immersed towards part of continuity. Okay, let's see what we have next. So Marvel Comics spoiled us this week with so many fantastic X-Men announcements for brand new comic books for the upcoming From the Ashes era. We got a brand new teaser over for the new X Factor series, which has a great creative team. We have artwork from Bob Quinn and writing from comics funny man Mark Russell himself. So this one is coming in May 9th from Marvel.com. X Factor pays a high price for fame, fortune, and power. Set in the X-Men's upcoming From the Ashes era, X Factor by Mark Russell and Bob Quinn brings back the iconic government mutant team. Rez says, Richter better win, lol. Yes, I think that would be so cool if we finally got to raise Richter's profile amidst some of the other X-Men over in the Era of Apocalypse series. I think that'd be excellent. I remember seeing Richter in some of the Betsy Braddock comic books, but I really hope that he's going to have a much larger outlet. That is a character who has so much potential for the rest of the X-Men line. Okay, let's explore this brand new X Factor series, though. While X-Men's mission forces them to work outside the law, certain teams have found ways for mutant rights to work within the system as officially sanctioned strike forces. Okay, for me, this is super interesting because I feel like in a lot of the From the Ashes comic books for the X-Men, the characters are going to be operating as kind of like rogue, renegade characters who've abandoned Krakoa and lost some of the sentiment of the public, especially after all of the invasions that marched on Krakoa and compromised their security. So in that sense, it's really interesting to see that any of the US government is willing to work alongside the mutants at this stage. Formed by the government in a response to a post-Krakoa outbreak of mutant paramilitary, special ops squads, and mercenary teams, X Factor will be co-led by Angel and Havoc, and include recruits like Pyro, Frenzy, Feral, and more. You know what? Honestly, I had no idea that Havoc was in this series. I mean, of course he is. Who else could that be featured prominently here? But the fact that this character is seemingly being taken away from Madeline Pryor and the Dark X-Men comic book is a little bit sad for me over as a reader. Really fantastic to see Frenzy in the cast, and also Pyro, who had a really interesting stint over on Marauders in terms of Krakoa for the X-Men. Okay, so these characters are part special agents for missions that require an arsenal of superpowers and part celebrity propaganda machine. X Factor will wage war against mutant factions like the Mutant Underground and X-Term. Whether they believe in their actions or are doing it just for a check, the members of X Factor are no fools when it comes to shady politics. As hidden agendas rear their ugly head, they'll fight against the dark consequences and disastrous public opinion from the inside. Today, fans can check out all new variant covers from the issue, including a group shot from Mahmoud Asrar, the first in a series of character pinups by Marcus Toe, and a Window Shades variant cover from Luciano Vecchio. Yeah, Mahmoud Asrar, Marcus Toe, Luciano Vecchio, these are all incredible creators over at Marvel Comics. We'll put over some of the variants on the screen in just a few moments. Okay, so in addition to Havoc, Angel, Pyro, Frenzy, and Feral, new variant covers also reveal two more recruits, including Dr. Cecilia Reyes and Zyber, a new character whose electronic base powers are essential to the team's covert missions. We even have more teaser text from Marvel describing the issue. I'm excited to check it out. Fame, Fortune, Mutants. From the ashes of Krakoa, a new mutant arms race sweeps the globe. International governments are building their own mutant armies, but only America's X Factor has the most powerful, most patriotic, most marketable mutant heroes to stem the tide and make the world safe for democracy. Join them as they go from one death-defying mission to another. Who will die? Who will love? Who will fall in love? Who will be the first to sell out? Like, comment, and subscribe to find out. In addition to some of these superheroics from the X Factor characters, it looks like this comic book is also going to feature some humor elements as well. I'm already picking up on, maybe some humor that's influenced over from other media like Helldivers or even The Boys. Just based on how that solicit text is written alone here, I'm really excited with the tone that Mark Russell brings to so many of his projects. I love Mark Russell's Flintstones comic book. I think it was amazing. I think some of Mark Russell's work on Prez is really satirical and really interesting. I'm very curious to see what kind of satire he could land towards the X Factor series. The thing I've always loved about the X-Men is that they're characters first and superheroes second. So being able to write characters like Havoc, Angel, and Frenzy in a post-Krakoa reality is an opportunity to write about what I really care about, which is how do we help each other survive the apathy of the world that we live in? It's so exciting to be back and drawing the mutants in the X-Men universe again, and doubly exciting to work with Mark again, Quinn added. Bob Quinn, excellent, excellent X-Men artist as well. To my mind, Mark's mix of humor and ability to shine a light on the peculiarities of modern society make him the perfect writer to tackle the relaunch of X Factor. I think I agree. Drawing this team and very unexpected twists and turns of the story has been a blast so far. I can't wait for readers to get their hands on it. Okay, so we're going to have to wait quite a few months here. It looks like this issue goes on sale August 14th. And we're going to check out some of these covers in just a few moments. Let's see if I can get more of this on the screen. Okay, perfect. We at least have the cover on the screen here. Check out this image over from Mahmoud Asrar. This is absolutely beautiful. Man, I love him as a superhero artist at Marvel. I wish we could get him crafting some interior work over for one of these X-Men comic books. Tremendous work here. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, next up, let's see who this one is illustrated by. Okay, we have another piece of artwork from Marcus Toe, very similar to Mahmoud Asrar. I love some of the draftsmanship, anatomy, and the way he's able to lay out some of these covers. Really tremendous work here over on this X Factor cover. This one's super interesting as well. This must be the Luciano Vecchio cover. Yes, it is. I think so much of the expressions that Vecchio is able to capture is so interesting, really is exemplified through some of the artwork in Resurrection and Magneto. Yeah, seeing these expressions for people like Pyro, Frenzy, and Angel adds so much context and starts really bringing the personality of this series towards the forefront. Also, these like prison bars here also give even more like personality and just experience over to the X-Men characters as well. Really tremendous stuff over with X Factor. I hope the comic book lives up to some of the artwork. And while I'm not the biggest fan of the main series cover over from Greg Land, I really think that so much of the other artwork here is really tremendous. Really happy to see that Mark Russell is a part of Marvel Comics from the Ashes era. I think that's a really smart talent pull over for Marvel's editorial. If I was making like a short list of dream creators, he probably wouldn't come to the forefront, but I'm more than happy to see him lined up here as part of the next big X-Men reboot. Okay, really tremendous stuff over from Marvel. Let's keep the hype going with a comic book that I really didn't expect to be so excited about here. The character of Wolverine, Logan, is such a tough sell for me. So it really takes an interesting creative team or different sensibility to capture my interest. But Marvel Comics just announced a brand new Wolverine series with writing from the recent Daredevil alumni Saladin Ahmed. Plus, we have artwork from Martin Kokolo. This is an absolute like dream creative team for me on a Wolverine series. I want to see what Ahmed and Kokolo have in store for Wolverine in the post from the Ashes era of X-Men. Just in time for the character's 50th anniversary, the Wolverine legend brings anew. Following the tragic fall in the brutal Sabretooth War, currently unfolding in the final issues of Ben Percy's Wolverine run, shout out to Ben Percy for sticking with this character for such a long time and just introducing so many interesting story details during the Krakoan era for Wolverine. Logan will turn his back on humanity, mutant kind, and the X-Men in an all-new ongoing Wolverine series from Saladin Ahmed and Marvel Stormbreaker artist Martin Kokolo, who's recently coming off Immortal Thor from Al Ewing. Announced yesterday and launching in September, the series will start from the X-Men's From the Ashes era, and today fans can check out a Berserker's Rage of new variant covers for the debut issue. Ahmed and Kokolo's run begins deep in the Canadian wilderness, where Wolverine reunites with his wolf pack and embraces the beast within. But Wolverine's more than an animal, he's a soldier, and a new war is brewing. As Nightcrawler struggles to remind Logan he's part of a family, Logan's exile is violently disturbed by his most hated foes. With each battle, a new existential threat gathers strength. This ancient villain has been bubbling under the surface of the Marvel Universe since the days of myth, and once unleashed, will dramatically alter the scope of Wolverine's storied history and force him to prove himself a hero like never before. There's a killer in the woods, and as Wolverine's attempted peace is shattered, an old enemy will reemerge as a new villain rises that will bring Logan to think of his berserker rage. Nightcrawler knows his old friend is capable of doing what's right, and before long, Logan will have to unleash his claws, push his healing factor to the limit, and demonstrate that he's the best he is at what he does, and once and for all, nice be damned. Note to collectors, this series kicks off with a key first appearance and a major addition to the lore of Wolverine. Okay, there's more text, but frankly, I feel like this article is a little cagey about what information it's revealing, to the readers here. But I do want to explore some of the brand new variants and see if we can maybe find any story ideas or possibilities here. Give me just a few moments. I think it's always a fantastic reminder to see that Patrick Gleason is still working over at Marvel Comics. I think this cover is really tremendous and just showcases how creative Gleason can be as an artist here as we get a peek over at Wolverine's adamantium skull. Here's another version of the image featuring more colors. Okay, it looks like this is a super epic Kare Andrews cover focusing over on the character of Jean Grey. I'm really loving the way that Kare Andrews is able to emphasize some of the really large pieces of anatomy for these characters and just implement so much emotion over in his work on the characters here. Also, I'm loving the corner box and just the references to the heyday of the 90s X-Men that's featured on this cover too. Okay, it looks like this is a Clayton Crane cover, judging from so much of just the realistic, like painterly quality and the way that these two characters are just embracing each other and really fighting here. A tremendous work from Clayton Crane. I'd also love to see him working on some interiors towards a Wolverine issue in the future, too. Let's see here. This is a negative space cover from John Tyler Christopher. Really liking how this one just is able to implement some of the yellow hues in Wolverine's kind of really nostalgic 90s costume with some beautiful yellow negative space here. I think the way that his biceps are just so detailed versus the yellow background creates just a really interesting sense of juxtaposition for the reader, too. Okay, I'm thinking this is probably a Peach Momoko cover. Yes. Very interesting to see Peach Momoko, an artist who usually focuses on younger characters, especially with Laura Kinney as Wolverine, take on the adult counterpart. But I'm thinking the big and bold expression from Wolverine really justifies the switch in character dynamics here. Also, the wolves are incredibly detailed and have really interesting expressions as well. Okay, let's see who this one is illustrated by. We have a Wolverine cover from Felipe Massafara. So that teaser that we read really teased the inclusion of Nightcrawler. And I'm liking that at least one variant cover for this series puts a little bit more emphasis on Nightcrawler and Wolverine's relationship. That's going to be a centerpiece of this brand new comic book. We have a reference to a very old Wolverine cover coming in from John Romita Jr. I'm also thinking that the way this cover is able to implement that strong expression for Wolverine is yet another really fantastic use of John Romita Jr. as a creator. Though, when I look at some of the anatomy on Wolverine's forehead in particular, I do wonder, how John Romita Jr. is able to lay out and illustrate some of the anatomy for the various characters here. We also have another Wolverine homage over from Mike Zeck. Mike Zeck is such a strong artist, but I don't think this one is quite as visceral as what we saw with John Romita Jr. Okay, and that was our variant covers over for the brand new Wolverine series coming in from Marvel. I think we have a lot to look forward to, which is frankly spearheaded from this super interesting creative team that we have. Okay, next up we have my favorite from the Ashes comic book that we're going to talk about today. It's none other than the next destination for two characters that have just been so instrumental towards the underground X-Men in the Krakoan Age of Comics, especially in the Fall of X era. We have a brand new destination for Emma Frost and Kitty Pryde over in Exceptional X-Men. Looks like these two characters are spearheading the next generation of X-Men characters. Let's go ahead and explore Exceptional X-Men. From the New Mutants to the Hellions, discovering you're a mutant in the Marvel Universe has never been easy. and in the wake of Krakoa, it's going to be harder than ever before. While the X-Men reintegrate into society after the fall of their mutant nation, mutants around the world still need protection, community, and guidance. An exceptional X-Men group of young mutants will luckily be trained by two of the greatest teachers in X-Men history, Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost. Today, fans can learn more about the series and the reveal of the first issue's cover. I want to talk in terms of Kitty Pryde and in the very latest issue of X-Men. For me, it really felt like Shadowcat was done, especially in her tense conversation with the older Wolverine character. The fact that she's going to be introduced back alongside Emma Frost in the new generation of X-Men mutants is going to be so much fun. I'm also really hoping that in the future of Exceptional X-Men, that Marvel Comics will still continue to explore the relationship between Emma Frost and Tony Stark. The way that this surprise marriage was able to bridge franchises has made the Marvel Universe feel so much more cohesive, and I think it would be such a shame if they dropped that super interesting direction. Let's see, where do we leave off? We left off right here, written by acclaimed author Eve Ewing and drawn by superstar Marvel Stormbreaker artist Carmen Carnero. Exceptional X-Men will be the final X title to launch in the From the Ashes era. I want to take just a quick step back here and talk about some of our previous history with both of these creators, Eve Ewing and Carmen Carnero. Eve Ewing has been producing phenomenal work in the most recent Black Panther series featuring an exiled T'Challa from Wakanda. Carmen Carnero delivered excellent work on a recent issue of Amazing Spider-Man and on the Captain America Sentinel of Liberty ongoing series. For me, this comic book has the most potential, not only from the creative team, but from the cast as well. I'm also really liking some of these brand new, younger X-Men characters that both Frost and Pryde are really going to be shepherding in the future of the franchise here. Rez says, I'm curious how long that marriage will last. I'm hoping it's going to be for a long time, Rez. The series will introduce 3 all-new mutants who turn to Kitty and Emma for help with their merging gifts. The metallic and whip-wielding Bronze, the emotion-stirring Axo, and the stealth-skilled fighter Melee. Under Kitty and Emma's tutelage, they'll not only learn how to survive, but to thrive. Kitty and Emma haven't always seen eye to eye, and they'll also have lessons to teach each other as they take up the call once more for the children. Exceptional X-Men begins with Kitty trying to get as far away from all things X as she possibly can. After the actions she took during Fall of X, Kitty craves normalcy and takes jobs as a regular bartender. She's definitely not getting ready to head up an all-new team of X-Men of wayward mutants while avoiding the watchful gaze of Emma Frost. Nothing but work, dating, and staving off self-depression. That's it. Let's see how long it lasts. I was really looking for this comic book to include that bit of characterization for Kitty Pryde. She has really seemingly lost so much of her motivation, and really trying to watch her get it back and really shepherd the next generation of X-Men characters, I think is really going to create an interesting plot thread as we head into Marvel's Exceptional X-Men. Longtime fans of Kitty Pryde can count on the kinds of adventures you expect from her as a classic favorite. While I hope new and older readers alike will get to love this all-new team of young mutants Ewing shared, Kitty, the one-time kid sister figure of the X-Men, has to reckon with her own memories, good and bad, of being a child of Xavier, as she navigates her role as a leader and mentor for a new generation of mutants who are trying to find their way in a time of crisis. You can really get an interesting sense of nostalgia if you check out some of the issues where Kitty Pryde was first introduced to the X-Men and juxtapose them over with Kitty Pryde's role right now in the Krakoan era, especially as we start to head into Exceptional X-Men. Now, while I believe Kitty did have a leadership role in the X-Men before, I don't think it was really fleshed out to a satisfactory point here. So I'm hoping that Exceptional X-Men will kind of buck that trend and will really feature like the evolution of Kitty Pryde, really turning to a professor for the X-Men characters. The story Eve brought up really hooked me from the beginning, Carnero said. I found it very interesting to see Kitty away from the X-Men and trying to live a normal life in Chicago, but finding herself with young mutants who have to deal with this post-Krakoan world and Emma's plans. I'm actually happy too to see Carmen Carnero talk about the X-Men franchise in terms of like characterization first. It feels like for me it would make her maybe more motivated as an artist to render some of these characters. On how the new cast will connect with both new and longtime fans, Ewing said, I always try to strike a chord between appealing to veteran comics fans and new readers, but since so many people fell in love with the X-Men as teens, and this book is about a team of young folks, that feels especially important to me here. Regarding the Young Mutants, I think the whole team fell in love with all three of them, Carnero added. I love that they are such opposites. Eve had very clear personalities, hobbies, musical tastes, and how they feel. When it came to designing them, it all developed naturally, and the whole team had a clear vision of what their final looks would be. I can't wait for readers to meet them. Really happy to hear that writer Eve Ewing seemingly has a team dynamic fleshed out for the exceptional X-Men. This isn't coming in as just like one like disparate plot thread, but instead it feels like Ewing really has something in mind for these three characters and how they're going to operate with Kitty and Emma over in the comic book too. With three flagship titles and a host of additional satellite series, the upcoming From the Ashes era will present fans with a wide range of different approaches to X-Men storytelling. Gail Simone and David Marquez's Uncanny X-Men are outlaw heroes protecting a world that hates and fears them from their home in New Orleans. Jed MacKay and Ryan Stegman's X-Men navigate the uncertain future of mutant kind while preparing for the worst for their base in Alaska. Meanwhile, Ewing and Carnero's exceptional X-Men exemplify that in the darkest times, hope can always be found in the next generation. Rez says, I have the most faith in Eve, as do I. Rez, it's so good to see somebody actually giving that opinion too. Among the three big flagship titles, this is the one for me. And finally hearing somebody share that opinion, super cathartic to hear. Okay, so this one is coming out even later than X Factor and Wolverine. It's on sale September 4th. Let's check out some variant covers. I feel like so much of the artwork for Exceptional X-Men is super ambitious, and thankfully these covers are no exception. They're illustrated by really fantastic talent at Marvel, including Joel Jones. Okay, so here's the cover for Joel Jones, highlighting Emma Frost and some of the other brand new X-Men characters over in the background. I'm loving the personality and expression for Emma, as well as the pose that Jones is able to craft here. This one, I believe, is coming from Elizabeth Torque. Looks like I was right over on that one. This one is tremendous. I think just the way that Elizabeth Torque was able to align the symmetry in the image is so beautiful. Also, I'm loving the expressions for so many of the disparate mutant characters, and think that Emma is able to evoke so much personality through her really epic glance over at the reader as well. I love this cover so much. I would love to see Elizabeth Torque render some interior pages on Exceptional X-Men in the near future. This cover also really tremendous and showcases hopefully a strong personality for the new mutant known as Bronze here. Let's see who illustrated this one. This one is coming in over from David Baldeon. As you can see, just the way that this character is just so elated and happy to greet the audience with interesting, hair that's seemingly able to move alongside her hands. Once again, renders so much personality and just really shows all the potential that this Exceptional X-Men series carries. I'm also wondering if there's going to be any like mutant power reveal over with the kitty ears as well. Rez says that cover's so cute. I definitely agree. I think like out of all the covers we looked at, this one is probably the winner for today. Looks like that was also the final cover over on X-Men, exceptional X-Men. I am really looking forward to this book here. I think we talked it up to death, but alongside so much of the other plot threads we really talked about, I am hoping that Eve Ewing will carry some of the plot threads that Jerry Duggan has established over with so much PTSD that I think both Kitty and Emma have harbored from the Krakoan era, and really try and find a way to get excited about what the future of the X-Men franchise holds, even as X-Men themselves. There is so much potential in this book. Really hope it's realized over in September when we finally get the debut for Exceptional X-Men. Okay, we'll probably cover this very quickly. It looks like over in Marvel's Voices, we are getting a brand new addition to the X-Men universe, a spinoff of the Juggernaut character known as Kid Juggernaut Justin Jin. For me, I'm going to be pretty interested and thrilled to see if Justin is able to pop up in any From the Ashes comic books. This one is coming in over from Marvel.com. On Wednesday, May 8th, Marvel's Voices will reach a milestone when it hits its 100th issue on Marvel Unlimited. The momentous issue, Marvel's Voices 100 Kid Juggernaut, is written by Anthony Oliveira with art by Minkyu Jung and will be available in Marvel Comics exclusive Infinity formats. Issue 100 is the arc finale of the current run of Kid Juggernaut, but it also kicks off a major new adventure for upcoming Marvel Voices stories on Marvel Unlimited. Teased on the final pages of the issue, Kid Juggernaut Marvel's Voices 1 will kick off next week on May 15th. Readers will finally get to dive into the origin story of Justin Jin. After his explosive introduction to Marvel's Voices, Kid Juggernaut is unstoppable. The new Kid Juggernaut series features superstar writer-artist team of Emily Kim and Minkyu Jung. As stated before here, I really have appreciated so much of what Juggernaut has done throughout the most recent run over on X-Men. I think we had just so many interesting issues where he was trapped over by Orcus. Plus, watching Juggernaut try and defend the Krakoan tree and follow the House of X was really, really fantastic. I'm wondering if in the From the Ashes era, maybe the creative teams will be able to spread out the original Juggernaut leveraged against Justin Jones to create future stories. Okay, so here's the cover over for the Marvel Unlimited comic book. Marvel's Voices, unlike any other Kid Juggernaut. Not familiar with Anthony Oliveira, but Minkyu Jung's artwork is really tremendous here. Okay, we have another piece of artwork here for this series as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then we'll be back here to go ahead and talk and close out our stream. Okay, we are back. We are back, and we are actually here to jump over to DC Comics just for a few moments to explore a brand new female led series. And instead of being Birds of Prey, this one is actually Gotham City Sirens. Looks like Harley Quinn, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy are set to reunite this August in a brand new Gotham City Sirens comic book. Fans have been. Oh, by the way, this one is coming in from Jenna Anderson on comicbook.com. Fans have been eager to see the Gotham City Sirens make their return, whether in comics or in some sort of adaptation, and it seems like they will soon get their wish. On Thursday, DC officially announced plans to publish a new Gotham City Sirens miniseries. So this one is going to run weekly across August. It's going to be a 4-issue miniseries written by Leah Williams featuring artwork from Matteo Lolli. I've been really positive on a lot of Leah Williams' recent work over at DC Comics with Power Girl. I feel like having her flesh out even more female antagonists over at DC Comics should be a ton of fun. Also, Matteo Lilly did really good job on a recent Deadpool comic book as well. Yeah, Rez, I'm not sure if you caught this one. This news story kind of snuck by me as I was preparing for the stream today, but really happy to see brand new work from Leah Williams. As the title suggests, Gotham City Sirens will see the return of the alliance between Harley Quinn, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy. Judging by the characters, the newer anti-heroine Punchline will also be making an appearance. I've defended Punchline really ad nauseum before. I think the way James Tynion has wrote that character has been really tremendous. And I'm hoping that Punchline really keeps that interesting satirical aspect about her too if she's implemented in Gotham City Sirens. All 4 issues will be arriving in August. Gotham City Sirens 1, August 7th, 2 the 14th, 3 the 21st, and 4th on the 28th. The main Catwoman, Harley Quinn, and Poison Ivy series will be taking a 1-month pause to accommodate for the new storyline. Oh, that's interesting. I just want to say good on DC Comics for giving all these comic books a break. They really should do that in terms of the publishing line. If you're really going to spotlight a character like Harley Quinn in another comic book, it might be a good idea to take a break momentarily for the story and try and accommodate some of those plot threads to make the publishing line feel a little bit more cohesive as well in terms of DC Comics. So what is Gotham City Sirens about? In Gotham City Sirens, a violent and highly illegal energy drink sponsored duck hunting operations kicks off the action, threatening the lives of the wildlife and residents of Gotham City alike. The only ones fit to save the day are the criminal trio of Catwoman, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn. They're back together as a team and ready for action for the first time in years. Gotham City Sirens will have special appearances by White Rabbit and Punchline and introduce the cowboy henchman sensation soon to be sweeping the nation known as the Nasty Boys. Get your chaps, spurs, and hats out because it's Wild West himbo hunting season for the Gotham City Sirens. Gotham City Sirens has guts. Thanks to Harley, Goo, We See You, Ivy, and Grit coming from Selena. There's even some gristle too with Bud and Lou involved. Keep scrolling for the first look at DC Comics' Gotham City Sirens relaunch. Judging from the text alone, it looks like this series is really going to be trying to leverage humor against the criminal backgrounds for so many of our Gotham City protagonists. Really liking this cover featuring Punchline. I feel like there is a lot of personality for Punchline, making this one just really intriguing to pick up here. Also, the way that Punchline just uses other people is just so integral to her character. And once again, it's just really great to see so much characterization from like one comic book image alone. Shout out to the Dodsons who look like worked on this cover, judging from the signature. Looks like there's more fantastic work from the Dodsons here, showcasing Catwoman maybe drinking some milk, accommodating her like feline tendencies as well. Yeah, great expressions for the characters in the background too. And I'm loving the Wild West theme. It looks like the Dodsons are having a lot of fun accommodating the theme with these Batman villains too. Here's the fourth issue. This one features a more traditional outfit for both Catwoman and Poison Ivy, but not Harley Quinn, who's on a giraffe. Also, it looks like Catwoman and Punchline are coming to blows. I'm wondering, like, amidst all the characters on the team, Catwoman is probably the most serious. Maybe it's Poison Ivy. It's got to be one of those two. Here we have a super, like, just standard, nice image from Ji Hyung Lee, but not really breaking any barriers here. Also extending this artwork from Harley Quinn. This one is kind of taking on the twisted Suicide Squad-esque version of the character. Finally, kind of like a TNA shot over with Poison Ivy. I think this Punchline cover has a little bit more expression than some of the others, and also like a stronger theme with all the money kind of floating around here. Of course, there's even some cheesecake on this image as well with Punchline. I really like Guillaume March as an artist. I think the expression that Poison Ivy is given here is super ambitious. And just all the detail, too, on the costume really showcases how much work March puts into like each and every one of his images. Yeah, lots of TNA coming in over for Guillaume March on this cover with Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. But once again here, the detail in the background with all the wildlife, as well as like the disparate trees, really, really beautiful. Even more animals and a cover illustrated by Guillaume March for both Catwoman and Punchline. With Punchline having all this soda in the background too. I think that's kind of an interesting shout out to her background over with the Joker. Okay, here's the cover from Guillaume March with all four covers aligned here. I think this does an excellent job just showcasing how versatile he is as an artist. Here we go. We have an image from Scott Forbes realizing like each of the characters in our cast in a more formal setting. Always love seeing like escapism rendered like this to showcase characters in different outfits. Once again, really, really fantastic cover showcasing our cast in like ultra modern aesthetic here. Okay, we have a cover for Daniel Hillard, showcasing our birds in their criminal element. And Natasha Bustos over from Fire and Ice really brings those like 60s elements into the Wild West theme very naturally. What a beautiful, beautiful cover for Gotham City Sirens. And it looks like this cover from Tierso reimagines the Gotham City Sirens as younger characters. Once again, with so much detail in the background, with just really, really bold expressions for each member of the cast. I'm loving just all these like disparate details with the plants over by Poison Ivy and the toy chest in the background and Harley's mallets. What an incredible cover. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and close out our stream today with our very final article. This is X-Men Monday coming in from Tom Brevoort, from Chris Hassan, and Adventures in Poor Taste. Let's go ahead and see what Tom Brevoort has to say about the X-Men's From the Ashes era. Welcome back to X-Men Monday, Tom. First, X-Men is a franchise with over 60 years of history, hundreds of characters, and a passionate fan base transcending comics. I'm curious, once you accepted the reins of the X-Men at Marvel, what did you do next? Where do you even start? Tom Brevoort says, well, it's not as though I wasn't familiar with the X-Men. I've read comics for a very long time and worked at Marvel for a very long time, so I wasn't starting from zero. People didn't have to explain to me why the guy was wearing the weird visor with the one big eye. I got it. And even before I was doing X-Men, like with the last couple of weeks right there before President of Marvel Dan Buckley said, hey, we want you to do X-Men. Jordan White, the outgoing X-Men editor, was starting to try and figure out what the next X-Men cycle would be. So I had at least 1 hour-long conversation with him and wrote up a bunch of initial notes. Like if I was approaching X-Men, I'd approach it kind of like this. So I actually had the beginnings of something. I had an occasion to pull those notes out earlier last week, and usually when I do something like that, the actual end books don't really match the initial notes very much at all. Things grow and expand, creators come in and take things in different directions, but looking at these notes again, damned if they don't look like the kind of line that we've built. This is so interesting to hear, Tom Brevoort talk about here. Jordan D. White has done just a wonderful, wonderful job building the X-Men's Krakoan era. This has been a really like long form, multi-year storyline for the franchise that I think has really just pushed what the X-Men can accomplish with all these like disparate characters operating in one central location. I'm really worried that this next launch of X-Men titles isn't going to be as cohesive because they don't have a big overarching theme like Krakoa. In that sense here, I'm really wondering like what the greater narrative of From the Ashes is going to be and what Tom Brevoort truly like has in store for the line. I am really hoping that, some of my fears are going to be alleviated when we get to, further into some of these titles. But right now, I am a little bit trepidatious about what the future of From the Ashes looks like for the X-Men. Okay, Tom Brevoort says, really the first thing I did, and it took a couple weeks to do this, is I wrote up one of my famous position documents. Usually these are 2 pages long or something and just kind of going, okay, we're going to recast Avengers. Rez, really great to hear just somebody in chat once again agreeing with me. Even though Krakoa has featured in just so many X-Men comics for such a long time, it really felt like it tapped into the full potential of what the franchise had to offer. And going back to a more traditional, like 90s-esque version of like disparate teams, I don't necessarily think play into what the X-Men really had to bring towards the spotlight here. So once again, I'm curious about what the future of the line is going to look like, but I am coming in here really comparing everything to Krakoa because I can't help do anything otherwise. New creators are going to have to come onto Avengers just because Jason Aaron is wrapping up. So where is Avengers now? What do I think it needs? What characters should be looking to push forward? What should be the stories we're telling be about? How should we go about this? What are the things that I think are working and the things that I don't think are working? It's just to have some document that I can hand to people that will at least put us on the same page. I feel like so many things in Krakoa are working right now, whether it be the super ambitious, time travel, really adult plot threads in Rise of the Powers of 10, or like the, globe-trotting Fall of the House of X storyline. For X-Men, I did all that, except it was much, much larger. It was more like a 15, 20-page document because you had to start at macro and work your way down to micro. Starting at macro was kind of like, okay, the last couple years, the Krakoan era, here are the things that worked well and the things I don't think worked as well. Here are the things I think worked for a while, but stopped working somewhere along the way, and or I'd like to push against this or move in another direction. And then it's sort of sketching it all out. I was having conversations with Jordan because obviously the end of the Krakoan era issues hadn't been written yet. They had a plan and a big broad outline, but nothing specific. So he walked me through all of that so I at least had kind of a rough idea of what the lay of the land would be like coming out of their last story. The next section of it is, here's what I think mutants are in the world. Here's what I think the status quo is, and are the specific things I want to touch on or go back to. It was like this, and now it's like this. And then from there, I started to boil it down into individual books. Like, here are a bunch of books that I think we should do. Some version of all 3 of the announced books with X-Men in their title were in that document. And some version of a couple of others that we've announced, X-Force, X-Factor, and so forth, was in that document. Once I had let Editor-in-Chief C.B. Cebulski read it, everyone was kind of aligned. If I take this image and compare it to Immortal X-Men, X-Men Red, Uncanny Spider-Man, for lack of like a third comic book. I do think that this launch looks a lot more traditional, especially with like Gail Simone's Uncanny X-Men team that features like so many prominent characters from X-Men 97. I'm just hoping these creators will find ways to carry these X-Men characters that have been so heavily explored in other mediums through these brand new comics. One thing that I really hope each and every one of these creators implement in terms of the writing team, from Gail Simone to Jed McKay to Eve Ewing, is really utilizing past continuity as a weapon. You know, the X-Men went really big and really bold in Krakoa. Ultimately, they were humbled time and time again by the foreign invaders, whether it be the Eternals or Orcus. And I really want each of these comic books to carry the grit and just really hard feelings that Fall of X really evoked and brought into the X-Men. Golden Arm 17 says, my concern is that the X books will retreading familiar territory. Exactly. That is exactly my concern. Krakoa era at least evolved the narrative and took us new places. The one thing I'll say, though, is that Gail Simone is doing very small things to change things up. Like, for instance, Uncanny X-Men is set in New Orleans. And also X-Men is set in Alaska. At least Exceptional X-Men has New Mutants. But if we had like a more connected like base of operations, or maybe like a stronger like antagonistic villainous group, you know, appearing across all these books, I feel like I would be a lot more excited about the next launch. Also, like, one thing I really want to comment on and explore here is the fact that so many of the Krakoan era X-Men books were like designed by Tom Muller, and it just created like an overall presentation and package that like elevated the Krakoan line of comics. Plus, like, all those text pages from Jonathan Hickman were so cool and did a great job making Krakoa feel like a more lived in, fleshed out universe. Maybe one thing that these books could do that would also align them more closely towards Krakoa in terms of the greater editorial nature is to keep implementing plot threads between the narrative. I think that Rise of the Powers of 10 and like Dead X-Men and Immortal X-Men, X-Men Forever, Fall of the House of X, these books have all used one or two plot threads from like all those disparate series to just make the line feel cohesive. So I'm really hoping that maybe Kitty Pryde's status quo will be referenced in Uncanny X-Men or X-Men proper, as opposed to just being featured in Exceptional X-Men. Okay, let's head back to the article. I went hunting for teams of people to make these books, and casting wasn't alone. I should mention my office team, Annalisa Bisa and Martin Biro, who worked with me on Avengers stuff before this. Annalise goes back to working on the Krakoan books at the beginning of the era. Then the wider team is editor Darren Shan and his assistant Noah Sharma, who came over with me from the Avengers, where they had been doing Invincible Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and a bunch of other things. And then Mark Basso and his assistant Drew Baumgardner stayed in on the X office, where they had been doing Wolverine and X-Force and are now doing Wolverine and X-Force. Once we had the beginnings of what all the books would be, I started going, okay, here's where I think they all go, here's who gets what. People can individually start thinking about who they might want to approach, and we can start to bounce around ideas for writers and artists and books and so forth. Casting everything starts from X-Men down, so the core 3 books get cast first, and then we go with the most immediate next books, and then further out books and second and third wave books. You know what? That is actually good to hear. We're already working on second and third wave titles. We have a lot of runway on this, so there's already stuff planned and in motion that you won't hear about for many months. Then it was just starting to assemble the creative crew, and the plan would shift as different people came on and did things. I am really hoping, in addition to like Exceptional X-Men, we might get maybe a new launch for X-Men teams like the Runaways here and the second and third waves of titles. Tons of potential here amidst the From the Ashes comics. Also, at this point, I'm really missing a destination for Madeline Pryor over in the Marvel Universe as well. Okay. AFPT says that was great. That was a very thorough explanation. Tom Brevoort says you'll find my answers are not short. Adventures in Porte says now, no, that filled in a lot of gaps. Now we're entering the From the Ashes era. How did you land on this significant title from the X-Men history? What does it mean to you? And what do you hope it signals for X fans? Well, it was a couple of things. Once we had creative teams, much like what Jordan's Krakoa crew had been doing, our new X crew was in constant communication. I can wake up in the middle of the night with a half baked idea for something in the X world, send an email, text, or post on Discord and go, hey, I got this idea, start thinking about this. And then somebody will either come back with, great, I've got the perfect place to do that, or that's the stupidest idea ever, we shouldn't do that, or some version of, well, it's not like what you said, but what if we turned it over and did it this way instead? I remember reading too about the Krakoan creators, especially when Jonathan Hickman was on board, having like some kind of Slack or connective, text thread where they were able to bounce off ideas too. I feel like this is how we get great comics. Really happy to hear that Marvel's like X-Men office is collaborating this way. We didn't really have a title going into this. My document name, which was just the document name, was called Solve for X. So that clearly was not going to be the name of this initiative because it's a great name for a position paper, but not a good name for a thing. And we spent a day or two coming with maybe a dozen awful names. So at some point, we went out to the X crew that existed at the point, and it was Gail Simone who threw out the phrase from the ashes amongst a bunch of other suggestions. Super interesting to hear that it was actually Gail Simone, writer of Uncanny X-Men, who coined that phrase too. That was the one that kind of caught my attention. I went, hey, that sounds good. It harkens back to X-Men history. In particular, that phrase comes from the splash page of the first all-new X-Men story in Giant Size X-Men, so it goes right back to the beginning. Here we go. It says, from the ashes of the past, there grows the fires of the future. Post Krakoa, whether that story ends wonderfully or horribly, it's definitely a changed state. And that kind of sums up what this era is all about. All that stuff happened, and now all those characters have to take a break and deal with what all of that meant. And where all of us are going individually and in groups or pairs because something seismic just happened. Living today is different than living yesterday, so we need to find a new direction and guiding star for what we do and how we live. You mentioned you're collaborating with the new X crew. In the Krakoan era, X fans heard a lot about the initial head of X concept, the X Slack, and how collaborative the X creators were. What can you share about the X office and how it's run? Okay, so right out the gate here, Tom Brevoort confirms that they don't have an X-Men Slack, but my crew is in a slightly different generation. There's a lot of email, and the new creators all keep a Discord where they talk all the time, so it's the same thing, only different. It's really proven to be a very comfortable and supportive collaboration. No, this is pretty much the same thing. You're just telling me that instead of Slack, you have a Discord. It's been a nice collaboration between the new crew and the old crew as we went into all this and laid all this stuff out. And as they begin to build towards their climax, we were sort of building together from both ends. I didn't want to affect what they were doing at all. I wanted them to be able to finish their story exactly the way they wanted to and not have to worry about us. And we are going to pick up the baton from where they leave it and go from there. Everybody has been very supportive of that, to the point where a couple of outgoing X-writers, particularly Jerry Duggan, have been dropping in little lines and bits of business because he knows what's coming up. So when it happens, people will be able to go, hey, look, he knew about that even then. Tremendous. Tremendous. I'm so happy that Tom Brevoort is kind of cluing in writers like Jerry Duggan to set up the new era of X-Men comics. Jordan just sent Uncanny X-Men 700 to print, and that's got a 10-page epilogue that's pretty much the launching pad for all the stuff we have coming out of it. It really is coordinated to the point where, like, the last panel of the last Krakoan story and the first panel of our first story could be happening a minute, hour, day, or week later. But you clearly can see as they go together that there's no conflicts. We pick up exactly where they leave off and we build out and go from there. One thing that maybe could make X-Men from the Ashes feel more cohesive is exactly what Braveheart is saying. They're going to try and pick up the baton over from Krakoa and try and write it like it's one cohesive story. If that works, it maybe could alleviate so much of my fears towards Krakoa, because hopefully the storyline will feel very similar even as it transitions into the next era. Going forward here, we'll see if Tom Brevoort is able to really live up to that really big and bold concept he's kind of setting up here. In our X office so far, it's been a very comfortable and collaborative situation. I'm absolutely bearing these writers and one another's scripts. Whether there's a script that's done and approved, I just send it to everybody. I can only imagine the horror they have. You just went to write NYX and you have 47 scripts, and maybe you should look at, because, Jen McKay is doing something that maybe you need to know about. But that's the kind of environment we're looking to foster and have going forward. I think it's definitely one of the strengths of the Krakoan era in the way Jordan was able to set all that up. So at least we're trying to absorb the best of it. Okay, very happy to hear that a lot of these editorial practices that they had during Krakoa are still being implemented towards From the Ashes. I wonder how many people who write scripts for their ongoing series for Captain America, is JMS reading every issue of Saladin Ahmed's Daredevil? Probably not. So yeah, having the X-Men creators work more collaboratively hopefully should produce a better line of comics. Before we get into some X-fan questions, I've been wondering about something. I've been an X-fan for most of my life, and 5 of those years have been spent writing X-Men Monday and sorting through countless fan questions. I've received the crash course in the many things that matter to this fandom, from the minuscule to the significant. So since you're working on the X line, is there anything you've learned from X-fan interactions that surprised you? Tom Brevoort says, I don't think it's so much X-Men fandom as it is little pockets of X fandom. From what I've seen in the past, even more or so over the last 8 or 9 months on my various social media feeds. People will bang the drum loudly for whatever thing it is they care about. Sometimes it's in an aggressive, almost negative fashion, like, you're not doing that thing that I want, and you're not going to do it, and I know you're not going to do it, so I'm pre-mad at you before you've done any comics. Then, there are the people who are just advocating for the thing they really want. I discovered very quickly that the texture of Storm's hair is very important to a certain segment of X-Men fandom. Man, when I read this, I just have to take a step back and say, at some point, I think the actual story material in the comics is probably more important than whatever, your overarching agenda is. And I wish there was a focus on that. For me, it feels like not enough comic book readers are actually absorbing the material and are just trying to find an excuse for something to really get hung up on. And that drives me absolutely nuts. That actually was good information to have, because that went into some of our decision making as we figured out what the character was going to look like in the post-Krakoan era. I'm not sure if you should listen to that section of the fandom if they're not even, really absorbing the books and they're just getting caught up on the aesthetic appearance for one of the characters. I saw there were a lot of people who were really invested in Betsy Braddock being Captain Britain, and then there were a lot of people who were really invested in Betsy Braddock not being Captain Britain. So that's a divide where it's going to be difficult to make everybody happy. You shouldn't be trying to make everybody happy. You should be just moving forward with your editorial choice and sticking by it in a big and bold way. If we do see Betsy Braddock not Captain Britain anymore, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed, because I don't think we ever had a comic book that truly tapped into the potential of what Betsy being Captain Britain truly could be. There was a small but very vocal assemblage of Jean Grey fans who were just like, Jean Grey needs to be doing something in here. And they've been the happiest human beings on the planet since we've announced the Phoenix book, because the messages I get from them are like, I've been waiting for this book since I started reading X-Men, or since I first started the show back in the 90s. Thank you so much. And it's like, well, be careful what you wish for. Hopefully the book is as good as you hope it is, and I hope it is. We're going to do everything we can to make it that good. But again, nobody's seen anything yet. Nobody has a really idea of what this stuff is going to be like. The one thing I did do, very mercenary, well, practically mercenary, I want to hope, is when I was putting together my document and my plan, I asked our sales and marketing team, headed by David Gabriel and Dan Petraglia, to reach out and pose a question to like a smattering of our big retailers. And the question was very simple. Tell me what characters your customers react to in X-Men books. What do they like? What do they want to see? I got feedbacks from retailers all over the nation and the world, and some of it was outlier stuff, but it was remarkably consistent. You know what? This is so interesting, I have to say. When we go back and look at this article, it feels to me like Tom Brevoort is outsourcing so much of his editorial direction towards what other people think, as opposed to just building his X-Men line off of his own ideas. I am starting to get a little bit worried with like how much outsourced information Brevoort has taken in, as opposed to the fact that he really should be like shepherding the line himself and have a big overarching plan. Maybe if this happened at the conceptual stage, it wouldn't be that bad, but the more that we hear about Tom Brevoort reaching out to other people as opposed to having a direction for the line is starting to make me worried. As we collated and put out that all together, we just treated it like votes. There was a big spread of 9 or 10 characters at the top, and then a long list of 2 and 3 vote go-getters. That's not to say those characters aren't popular and don't have fans, but if you're talking about the consumer fan base, it's pretty clear that the specific characters that at least people selling the books on the front line think are the ones that are going to appeal to their customers. That wasn't used as an absolute map or anything, but it was definitely used as a guidepost to go, okay, if they really like this character, maybe we should be thinking about doing a project with the character. Or maybe we should see about putting that character into place on the canvas in a title where they're more prominent. Because again, speaking mercenary style, I want to sell a lot of X-Men comics. Look, that's important, but also I think Fall of X introduced so many just epic comic books and great ideas from the line. I think Realm of X was just a tremendous creative success for those like disparate mutants. I also think comic books like Uncanny Spider-Man fleshed out Nightcrawler in a different role that wasn't as explored enough. I really think Tom Brevoort needs to be taking chances with some of these books as opposed to just catering to existing fans that are starting to age up in terms of the comics reading audience. AIPT says that's understandable since you evoked. And I just want to say too, before we continue the article, having a Jean Grey ongoing series, I don't think that's a bad idea at all, but give me some new element of continuity like Fall of X to really keep things going and to keep things feeling like fresh and invigorated. Okay, X-Fan Jean Grey Red said showcasing Jean Grey as a Phoenix in an ongoing series is not only first, but surprisingly so, also reverent of the character in a way that seems intuitive, progressive, and necessary. What prompted you to take such a bold step in Jean's development? Tom says, going back to when I was a reader of the X-Men in the 70s and 80s, Jean Grey Phoenix was a big character. I always thought, just as somebody in the halls of Marvel, we should do a Phoenix book. And it should be a cosmic book. I don't understand why nobody's ever done this before. But that seems like such an easy layup. This is a character who's popular, and we typically see her, even in that role on Earth, hanging out with, 6 other guys in a mansion, or on an island, or a building in Manhattan doing typical X-Men stuff, when really that character, at that scale, should be dealing with bigger or vast things. So this was an opportunity to ask what books I would like to see. Also, as a general guidepost, I feel like we should be doing more solo X-Men projects. There have been plenty of them that have been done. Most of them have been limited series, and even the ongoing series tended to struggle to maintain a long, healthy life. Frankly, all the stuff that we do may have the exact same problem, but I do feel that particularly once you get past a solid core, you end up working with a team of concepts that feel to me like somebody doing a draft pick, wandering down to the beach at Krakoa and going, hey, I need 5 guys to have an adventure who's around. And 5 disparate characters get involved in a story because they're the ones that happen to show up that day, and I'm not really looking to cast aspersions or anything anybody's done in the past. I still think like the mindset that Tom Brevoort is going into, especially like with this Phoenix book, is maybe not conducive to great storytelling, right? Like, I think it's really cool to have a Jean Grey ongoing series, but you need to take a plot thread or two to sell the marketing for this book. You need to have a big story to keep readers really engaged. In keeping the cards so close to your chest and not featuring like even one element of setup for the narrative here, I think is definitely a missed opportunity. Rez says Cosmic Marvel is in a really bad place. From Guardians to Shi'ar to Kree Scroll, I think Cosmic Marvel is at its worst right now. Cosmic Marvel has a lot of issues. Guardians of the Galaxy is not in a good place. I feel like they don't know what to do with Cosmic Ghost Rider. Yes, Cosmic Marvel needs Jordan D. White. Also, one thing to mention, maybe the Avengers franchise will improve with Jordan D. White headed over to that era of Marvel's publishing. Let's see, how much more of this do we have? Wow, this is a really big article here. I really just want to focus in on the end at this point. I'm getting really frustrated at a lot of the answers Tom Brevoort is giving. Let's check in on this question, because I was really interested to see if Greg Capullo was going to be the artist on the Wolverine series, but it looks like he's taking on a different comic book. Let's see what Tom Brevoort has to say about it. He says it's an X title. Again, there'll be an announcement at the appropriate moment when it is ready to be announced. It certainly won't be a small thing because Greg is a massive talent. He hasn't done stuff for Marvel in a good long while. Old people like me were around when he was doing X-Force and things like that back in the day. But for a younger generation, which is virtually anybody, it should be exciting to see him drawing Marvel characters again. Golden Arm 17, what do you think they will do with the mutants on Mars? Man, I'm not really sure yet. I am really hoping Marvel just keeps them there, but I feel like they really want to undo like all the big status quo directions. Honestly, I wonder if maybe Orcus like blows up Mars at the end of Fall of the House of X in order to keep like the roster clean and like the status quo clean for the From the Ashes era. But I feel like there's definitely a reason why we don't know what the Storm ongoing is going to look like. By the way, that's like my worst case scenario. My best case scenario is for Storm's new ongoing series to carry maybe a couple supporting cast members and to be featured back on Mars. Rez says, forget about them, probably like most of Marvel Cosmic eventually. I mean, yeah, I know we're given like a doomer aesthetic, not only from me, but for the chat as well. But I mean, being trepidatious about these comic books is appropriate. Not every comic book is created equally. And I think there is plenty of reason to be concerned about this upcoming X-Men launch. Okay, so AIPT just straight up asked Tom Brevoort what is going on with Bishop. Brevoort says it may take a while. You'll definitely see Bishop. We're talking about Bishop. How about Iceman? Tom Brevoort says Iceman, yes. Okay, Monet. Tom says Gail's actually been talking publicly about her interest in Monet, so no sense in hiding that. Yet would love to see Monet be featured on the Uncanny X-Men roster with Gail Simone. The X-Men characters that she has are way too traditional. She needs somebody like Monet to like shake up the cast. Okay, Cable. Tom Brevoort says like Bishop, not necessarily right away. I'm going to sidebar here for a second. X-Men traditionally can be a tough series to get into for people because its backstory and cosmology are complicated. It has so many things and so many characters that the uninitiated look at it and go, where do I even start? I think there's some real validity to that. So one of the ground rules I put down at the start for this of everybody is I don't want any doppelganger characters and I don't want any characters from another timeline. This is so problematic for me because if there's a reason why a creator is able to justify a doppelganger character being in a comic book for a really great story reason, editorial shouldn't be pushing back against this. I'm really disappointed with so many of the things Tom Brevoort has said throughout this interview. I feel like he is looking at the line in terms of getting the most sales as opposed to telling the most robust and epic story. Here, let's go to some of the final questions here. AIPT says, let's do two more. Sync, one of the breakout characters of the Krakoan era. Tom Brevoort says, I can't say anything about Sync. Hopefully, that's because Sync will be in a From the Ashes comic book. Okay, this is a character I get questions about pretty much every week. Hellion, Tom. Heads just whipped up around the office. As soon as you said that, it got a reaction. Jordan would be very honest about there never being Hellion plans. Tom Brevoort says, again, in this new From the Ashes era, we're no longer bound by taste and opinions of Jordan White. You're in the hands of a more crass and terrible figure than he ever was. So maybe it's time to have hope. Maybe be careful what you wish for. We'll see. Okay. My goodness, this is a long article. Okay, one final question. 6 months into the From the Ashes era, what 3 X-Men characters will fans be talking about? Tom Brevoort, wow, that's a good question. I'm pulling up my master chart here for the sake of argument. Rather than starting in May, let's say from June. So that pretty much puts us around December. Let's see, who do I have on my little chart and who can I point out to? I definitely think we'll be talking about Inmate X. Oh, very cool. He's showing off some artwork for the new characters too. I think we'll definitely be talking about Iceman. Yeah, loving the position that Iceman's been in over in Fall of X. And I think of all people, again, this is probably more of a tease than it's worth. But what the hell? We'll talk a little bit about Stevie Hunter. Okay, you know what? I think I dropped off of the Chris Claremont run right when Kitty was introduced. So maybe I'll try and pick it back up and try and figure out who this Stevie Hunter character is. Okay. Good on you, AOPAT. They tell Tom Brevoort to keep it going. He says Thunderbird. We'll get some Thunderbird. I'm coming across like the oldest man in the world. I only named X-Men characters that were created before 1980. What about Vanisher? I have no idea who Vanisher is. We'll see. We'll see the Vanisher before that. The Vanisher's in here, believe it or not. Somewhere. It's not a big appearance, but he makes an appearance and it's not insignificant. Okay, and then to wrap this up, let's see. You already saw the teasers for Wolverine and X Factor above. Now here's your look at 3 unlettered pages from Uncanny X-Men 1 from Gail Simone and David Marquez. This is amazing. Oh my goodness. It's hard for me to be negative about these books when we have just so much incredible artwork from David Marquez. These character expressions are amazing. This page layout is beautiful. These panel bleeds, the negative space is just awe-inspiring. I really hope that when this page is lettered, it doesn't take the majesty of the layout away. Yeah, check it out. We have just beautiful panel bleeds. Really, really complicated page that shows a lot of motion for Rogue in particular. And man, these final 3 panels, you know, kind of trapped in the green hue, showcasing the light from this dragon monster is beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful work here. And then we get like a more casual, more intimate setting between Rogue, Wolverine, and Gambit. It's a good idea for Gail Simone to maybe take on just a couple of plot threads and to get more intimate with some of these characters. Hopefully this is going to be a big like jumping off point for so many X-Men readers, and I do understand, you know, maybe taking as few plot threads as possible and really building towards a more robust story. Golden Arm 17, totally agree. I'm glad you do too. But wait, there's more. Here's your first look at Scotty Young's variant cover for X-Men 1 by Jed McKay and Ryan Stegman. Oh, okay. You know what? I was kind of curious to see if Scotty Young was writing the dialogue or if other writers were. So, very cool to see that Jed McKay actually wrote this thing. Let's see what he said. So, for Juggernaut, he wrote, "Sorry, but I'm new here. Can anyone tell me where we're running to?" Beast. "Oh, we're not running anywhere. It's just a cover." Cyclops. "All we got to do is look like we're running somewhere." Yeah, there's a lot of X-Men books that have characters just running towards, some like disparate location, and we have no idea where. The cover for the final issue of X-Men has that featured too, with like a white background and all these mutants like running towards some mysterious destination. Okay, I think that's going to be it here. Yeah, Magneto in his chair too in the background. That's funny stuff as well. All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming aboard our stream today. Man, I had a ton of fun going through all these X-Men books and seeing what the future of From the Ashes looks like. I had a ton of fun cringing at so much of what Tom Brevoort said. I hope in the future, if Tom Brevoort ever talks to Adventures in Poor Taste again, he'll talk more about how the plot threads for the various X-Men comics actually create good stories as opposed to high sales. Because I want to make sure that this comic book, stays with the strongest and best stories we can possibly have. All right, I want to thank you so much for coming over to our stream today. We'll be back on Tuesday with the review for Batman and Robin. On Wednesday, we'll have some Marvel Comics reviews. And then this upcoming Saturday, we'll be back here over for the stream. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday afternoon with me. And we'll be back really, really soon. You have a nice rest.